One. Let's do this. Alrighty, what's up everybody that finds this either watching it live or on YouTube? This is going to go up later. I am Ghoul02. I am a competitive Catherine player, pretty well known for my SGDQ run especially, but I'm also probably widely considered to be somewhere between top 4 and top 6, maybe top 7, like in that realm for the actual versus mode of this game. And we recently got Catherine Full Body announced, so for those that might not have actually caught up with the news or know what's going on with it, Catherine Full Body is essentially Persona 4 Golden to Catherine's Vanilla Persona 4. It's an enhanced port coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita. It's set to come out next year. So it's got new features, new content, a new character, but probably most relevant to me, and if you're watching this, it has online multiplayer, and they specifically said that the overseas reception to the Versus mode, aka the competitive Catherine community, really inspired them to want to go the extra mile and create that. So I figured, even though this is in English, I would go ahead and put my thoughts for what I personally would like to see going forward. I'm just one person. I'm not really a game designer. I am a game design enthusiast, but having not made a game before, I'm probably wrong, or I've probably got some specific numbers off in my head. But regardless, I still think it would be probably beneficial to at least me, and I think it'd be fun to just talk about what I would like to see. So I'm going to play some Babel in the background and just kind of talk for a little bit. So to go over what's officially confirmed, we do have confirmed netplay, which is absolutely huge, by the way. It's probably been the single biggest barrier to entry for competitive Catherine, is that there is no good way of playing. Like, you have to have a local scene, or you just cannot get better at the game, because it is so different from how you actually normally would play. And there's not a lot of games like that don't thrive without, or that thrive without some kind of online component that allows you to matchmake and play with people from everywhere. So it's really, 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 really cool that we're getting that play to begin with. Oh, I guess I should move on to my splits here. So I'm recording this live, including the gameplay, so I'm not particularly good at Axismundi, so I'm not very likely to actually play this, just an FYI. So anyways, Netcode. They really need to treat it like a fighting game, and I know it's a big cliche, Catherine isn't actually a fighting game, yada yada yada. At the end of the day, if the netcode is going to be in the game, it has to be playable, and that means, like, there's a lot of different ways that netcode works. They need to look more like the Arc System work style rather than, say, Splatoon or Mario Kart, which works well for that specific game type, but would not work well for Catherine. I don't think. I don't know as much about netcode, so I can't talk about it too much, other than that if they're going to put it in, it needs to be done pretty well. Otherwise, it really doesn't add that much beyond getting people excited about the game in a different way. So ideally, there's the ability to match against randoms as well as with people in your friends list. Stage select would be really, really nice. Probably the easiest way to handle it for an online setting would be both characters pick a stage and randomly chooses between the two, or expects the best out of 3. First stage is random, loser picks the next stage on each of them. Something like that would work. It'd be a bit tricky because I don't think they're going to have access to whatever our banned stage list would be, which would mean that for my next point, I really want to see a ranked system come out. That could be a bit odd because the official tournament scene may not allow some stages, and upsets totally dumb. So, like, the tournament community may still have bans on, say, something like a prison equivalent comes out, but it'll still be playable online, which kind of sucks, but is what it is. I'm sure that the community would rally around it, and even, like, if we find other people online that use those stages, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to play an occasional game on prison, for example. Yeah, I'd love to see a full-on netcode, you know, solid netcode, really fun online presence. Throw a full ranked thing. It's got to have a leaverbuster as well. You got to make sure that people can't just DC when they start losing. You know, I would love to look online in a year and see that, like, you know, Sketches and Shaz and everyone else, because it would be a really cool way to also something a couple people I know. I think it was I forget who it was. We've been trying to put together a ranking. It would be really cool to have, like, your online rank actually be able to factor in, like, okay, this guy is really put the work in on net play, and even though he hasn't been to as many tournaments in person, he looks really solid on here. You know, we can probably drop him higher. I think that stuff would be really interesting to see. It could be really useful for tournament ranking as well. Considering that I gave the basic seeding for CEO Taku, and it's really difficult to do sometimes. In part because there is a lot of parity in the Catherine community right now, outside of a very few obvious positions. We need a spectate option. I think something that would be really big and opens up a lot for is going to be online tournaments, and by themselves they're going to be really cool because they'll happen regardless. But I think a spectate option gives us the ability to promote ourselves on Twitch when we're not at big events. So we could have a weekly tournament. Maybe it draws 10 viewers, maybe it draws 5. It still gives us a consistent online presence, which I think is really important to growing the community as it goes further. If people can't watch it, they can't get interested, and they won't want to continue to invest time either watching or trying to get into the, play. So, yeah, just a spectate option so we can run like a bi-weekly tournament and have it streamed would be really huge just from the exposure side. All right. So those are like the basics. That is assuming they do almost nothing to the actual stages of the gameplay, just based on only what is announced right now, which is they are doing they're adding online for the versus component of the game. I had to think that one through a little bit. Okay, so in-depth. Stuff that actually involves them going in and changing the game engine as it is right now. First thing that comes to mind is they can fix Prison so easily and make that I don't think it would be an amazing stage necessarily, but I think it would have very strong counterpick potential if nothing else. I think it would have a bit of it would be like a more extreme version of Clock Tower, which I already think is borderline counterpick worthy. Yeah, so Clock Tower I think is already counterpick worthy, arguably, and I think Prison would be a more extreme version of it, but it's so easy. All they gotta do is take the bottom layer and make it out of dark blocks. Even heavy blocks would honestly fix the issue, but I would just go dark blocks and make it 100% confirmed that you are not going to destroy the stage out from underneath the other side by just walking. So, pin situations. As of right now, we're not sure exactly what causes it, but a pin is, one sheep hits the other, and if there's flat ground below them and they can't fall down below to grab onto the ledge, you get a hard knockdown, and the other person can stand on you, and you can't stand up until they get off of you, which we call a pin, because it effectively acts like a wrestling pin. Once you get it, the game is essentially over outside of rare situations. However, there is not parity between the two players on it, and I think they should leave the pin interaction in, because I think it's really interesting. It's already a game, like Catherine already, one of the things that's really cool about it is how fast rounds can go. As opposed to like a street fight or something where there's a bit of a build up to before somebody actually dies. When you're watching Catherine, part of the excitement is that any hit could be the hit that ends up with the kill. And I think leaving that in is really big. I would just make it where you remove the mini knowledge check from Orange with the countdown. Just give it to him. If they wanted to make it just like an instant kill where as soon as you get the pin, the round ends, and like the sheep does like a wrestling pin where it like grabs his leg or something, like, okay, sure, go ahead. But I'd be okay with even just like, you know, when it recognizes the pin situation, it just speeds up the blocks falling out from underneath you. Would be fine. But as long as they add parity on that, I think that would be really good. Altered state. In vanilla Catherine, altered state is a glitch where we believe what happens, we're not 100% sure, is when the game gets confused about you can grab a block while you're in mid-air, essentially, and the game doesn't reset your fall state when you do that. And it means that whenever, if I were to drop down like I'm doing right here, I would just fall instead of grabbing on, because it doesn't think that I actually have the ability to grab the sledge, because it assumes I'm still in fall state, and it doesn't reset that. And it's a really common thing, and it's actually a big, it's a problem, I think. It's the only glitch we found that I think actually causes a balance issue, because I think it actually causes too many issues with reversal options. So I would love to see them either remove it, at the very least, say they can't isolate the glitch that causes it. Adding an indicator to when you fall where your character model is, like, you know, say a red color or something, so that you know that you're in altered state and need to get rid of it, would be huge, because right now it's completely invisible. You have to just know, okay, I'm in altered state, I can't allow this to continue. Yeah, cheers for the subscription, Linus. I think that would be huge as far as just sheer clarity, and I don't think it would actually, I think it would be a healthy thing for the game as a whole to either patch it out entirely, or worst comes to worst, add an indicator that altered state is active and you need to find a way to remove it. I don't think it makes DPs too free. I think the fact that you're doing a DP, you're already doing a reversal option that if it fails, you are in a bad situation. You instantly, by taking the risk and going for the DP, you're putting yourself in a bad situation. I don't think you should be punished doubly so by meaning that you can't actually climb afterwards as well. It changes the dropkick game. I think it removes a reversal option that you don't really need. Because the person ahead does technically still have tempo and pace advantage. So I think removing altered state entirely is good. If nothing else, put a fucking indicator on it, because there are way too many times where people, and like even casting, it's hard to, like not even playing, it's hard to recognize when you're casting, because everything happens so fast. Early balance patches. When you add in online, I'm sure there's going to be things that the relatively small community does not know about. Going through and fixing, you know, imagine if just early on they realized that Prison had the major issue where you could just push out the entire stage, and they fixed it and did the very basic thing of changing that. Like, doing little things like that early on in release week would be really big, I think. Just because it would allow for the online mode to matter. It would allow us to keep potentially all 9 stages legal, assuming they do it properly. Basically, they just need to treat the game with respect. Treat it like a fighting game. If something is out of line or clearly not intending how it should be, look for a healthy change, if there is one. Okay. Replays. I would love the ability to save replays in this game, especially with online play. They could go the extra mile, even, and give you the ability to pause a replay and resume action from a specific spot. That would be really, really, really big for a learning tool. But if nothing else, just being able to save a replay and say, okay, I lost to Shaz online on this date, let me see what I did, and without having to have a capture card would be really, really, really big, because then I don't have to have a capture card running the entire time while playing. Replay sharing would be nice. Again, that's kind of unnecessary in a way, but it would be really, really nice. Don't think too much really needs to go in depth on that, other than the more features they add to replays, the more useful that the feature would become. Random stage select. Right now, there is no random stage select beyond holding or mashing right, not looking at the screen, and just hoping it shows up. It'd be really, really nice for either practice, or arguably it could be something we do at the start of a match where we just use random stage. I know it sounds a bit off, but I know that is something that is done in the Tekken community, where the first match is always on a random stage. Obviously, we are not Tekken, but I think there's an argument that a random stage may be even the fairest way to go about it. If nothing else, it would be great for practice so you don't get stuck on the same stage all the time. Because it's really easy in practice to just stay on a single stage for an hour and realize you haven't practiced anything else. Items. Do not touch item balance, for the most part. I do not think they need to change it. I've said it before, competitive Catherine was an accident. They did not intend for it to be as well put together as they did. And items, actually, the more we've looked into them, the healthier they have become for the game. They add a catch-up mechanic, which is huge. Without that, the game would be a lot worse, to be quite honest, because it gives a punishment for trying to climb away, which the game actually needs. It's kind of it's a good way of putting this. It's a bit of a misconception that the randomness in the items is inherently bad. I know it was 5-Leaf Clover I was talking about about Mario Kart with one time, and he said that like competitive Mario Kart without items would be atrocious. And I was like, that sounds so counterintuitive. Surely you want whatever is the best display of skill. And he's like, yes, and that is items, because without them, there is not enough catch-up factor, so the person who gets the first lead would immediately win. That would very likely happen with Catherine. So removing that, and even mucking with it even much at all, like they actually almost got it right on their first try, which is kind of a crazy thought. This is always the part of the stage that I suck at. I have no idea what the proper way to climb this area is. So yeah, don't mess with items too much. Don't try to remove randomness out of it as much as you have. It's so close to being correct already that I can't imagine that changing it much would do anything other than upset the balance that already is there. Also, thank you, Metal Chaos Master. Alright, we're almost up. This is a bit of an interesting one, because I'm sure there are going to be people in the community that disagree. I think Quadrangle, a fix that allowed items to spawn on ice, would actually be very beneficial. That's going to be a controversial opinion, because it does allow for counterplay against item-heavy players in sheer stage, but I think it allows defensive play to be too strong on that stage, to be quite honest, and I would prefer to see that removed. Because I think it just removes the fast of the game, which shouldn't happen. Item play is so big and competitive, Catherine, and removing it outright is just not good. Yeah, it's stuck. Okay. So those are like the basics of nothing else about the game that we don't have isn't there.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah. So this is the, if they really want to go the extra mile, and if I'm a game designer, or you know, at some indie game studio, my goal was to create the ideal version of competitive capture. Say I am the Riot Games to the original Dota, and Catherine is Dota, and I'm making League of Legends or something. Or I'm Icons to Melee, or, you know, what would I do, like, as a super in-depth way of making the mode better or more interesting. Character customization. Let us play as something other than blue and orange sheep. I think giving players the ability to have a bit of personality in the character they choose, whether or not it has any gameplay effect, would be really, really, really cool. They already have character models for 2 character models for Vincent. They have a model for Catherine. There are all of the enemy sheep you could use. I think any of those, just being able to at the start of the round choose what sheep you're going to use would be really, really fun. And again, this is with no effect on gameplay right now. I actually think if they wanted to, I could see some really, really, really cool stuff done with that. Like, I was talking about how you could have a character that ran 20% faster, but any block pulls were much slower. Not even much slower. Like, say you lose 30% on block speed in exchange for 20% movement speed, and you lose 10% climbing speed. All of a sudden, you now have a character that has a really, really different playstyle from what a normal sheep would have, because your footsies are now really, really, really strong, but your breakaway speed is now gone. I think that would be really, 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 really cool. I think it would be hard to balance, potentially. I think there's a very good chance that one character ends up being much stronger than the others, at which point we could look into a ban, or, assuming they're smart, you have to let us use duplicates no matter what. Do not restrict us. Just have 2 colors of every sprite, or every character model. Let us use whatever we want to there. We either say, okay, we like how this character plays, or okay, this character can use every item twice. Clearly unhealthy, just get rid of them. I think would be, even if you just left the balance in our hands afterwards, I think we could make that work in a cool way. It's a bit risky, could lead to some divides in the community. I think the community's awesome enough we could make that work. Don't think there's too much more to say on that. I think if that ever did become a thing, I would probably end up maining Catherine, just because I could. But it's pretty unlikely, and that's fine. This is like the dream wish list. Alright. 2 things on XFactor. One of them is a bit odd. I don't think I've ever heard it suggested anywhere, but I'd be curious to see it as a change. I would like to see XFactor only spawn if you push a block as opposed to if you pull it. And that sounds really, 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 really weird when I say it outright. Like, if you don't think about it, but a push is generally a more deliberate action. It would mean that, in general, if it's a push, I expect the person to be item farming as opposed to a pull, which makes it feel more random. It also means that you are pushing the XFactor away from you as it spawns, which means that there is counterplay where the other person can react and go to it while you're moving over to the XFactor, which I think would be healthy because XFactor can basically be an instant win if it shows up at the right time. The other thing is I think it would be cool to have a second type of XFactor, and the one that I kind of came up with in my head was, what if instead of being able to climb 2 blocks at once, you just moved at double speed? So now you lose the climbing power that the up 2 XFactor has, which is a different type of speed, but you have a different type of breakaway speed now. I think that could lead to a really interesting strategic decision, and I think that could almost play into playstyle as opposed to something else. You know, so I know that with my playstyle, there's a decent chance that the double speed XFactor would actually work better for me, but for someone like a Sketches, where I don't think his climbing skills are quite as strong, or like a, maybe not Sketches, Sketches is actually a pretty strong climber. Someone like a Mike Mustis. The up 2 XFactor I think would be really, really important for them because it gives him the ability to make up for some deficits in climbing knowledge. And have less efficient climbing work better, I guess is kind of the best way of doing it. So, yeah, just 2 minor changes, neither of which is really necessary, but I think would be interesting to see implemented. I don't know, and again, if anything like this were to become a problem, I think it would be relatively easy for the community to fix without intervention from Atlas, which would be one of the big things for any change that I'd want, because eventually, at some point, development on the game will stop, and from there, the community will be on our own. And I'd like us to be able to police whatever decisions the company makes. So, like, honestly, if they did nothing but just take what was already there, slap an online mode, and give it to us, that would be totally fine. These are just, like, the dreams, and, like, if you could make my, if I could make my own version of the game, this is what I would try to put into it and handle well. I think that covers balance. Yeah, if anybody has anything that they want to bring up or talk about, feel free to do it. Yeah, the net play by itself is huge, assuming it works well. I totally agree there. Also has it going 10K. Yeah, Axismundi being fixed is going to be really nice. I'm curious to see how there's apparently a new mechanic where blocks will group up and get pushed as a group. I don't want to see it in competitive. Dacid Bro mentioned it on Twitter. It sounds to me like it would be really, really easy to abuse defensively, which I think defense is already probably the strongest way to play as of right now. I think that destroys blocks could be interesting. I mean, if they really wanted to go there, it could almost be interesting to give you the ability to drop a dark hole block as an item. I feel like that could lead to some really creative situations as well, which would be giving players some cool tools, but I think that's a bit scary. Atlas fighting game. I can see that being cool. Persona 4 Arena is probably as close as we'll ever get in Soul 4. More Babel stages? Yeah, I'd be totally down for that. Well, I mean, I say that. One of the nice things, this is a bit, the length of every Babel stage done consecutively is really, really nice. Or at least for pairs. So I actually wouldn't want it to be significantly longer because then it will not ever get back into a GDQ. I really, really, really had to fight to get it in the first time, and we're struggling to get it in the second with true co-op.
update. Good update.
Yeah, the ability to I think the ability to destroy a block would actually help you break defense, which I think would be really, really important. Because again, I do think that defensive play is stronger than offensive right now by a little bit. I need to level up soon or I'm going to die. Cool, we got it.
Good update. Good update. Good update. Good update.
It'd be kind of cool if they end up supporting us for the first. We might actually get an official Evo tournament again, which would be really, really cool.
Good update. Good update.
I don't want to talk too much about it for privacy things, but Atlas was very, very close to officially working with us for 2016, and then a couple of things ended up falling through. Not by any fault of anybody. But yeah, official Catherine tournaments would be really, really cool. It's honestly, I think the port came at about the best possible time, not because the community was dying, but I think we were going to struggle going forward a little bit. CEO Taku is growing a lot. I don't know if we necessarily would get a main stage slot there next year without it. We still get a fair number of players at Evo and such, but I think the community would have started to slowly drift away into other games. And I don't think that. I think the port basically prevents that from happening for at least a little while. So, kind of fortunate timing there. It's funny that it's like you feel loved by a developer. I think it was honestly Atlas in the first place that got the community where it is today, because 2015 Evo was basically like the true revival of modern Catherine, and it kind of continued from there. That gave us the momentum going into Evo 2016, which gave us, or that gave us CEO Taku, which gave us incentive to do it at Evo 2016, which gave us Genesis. Like, a lot can be traced back to Evo 2015. And yeah, Vita version is really, really exciting. Especially if they end up doing more with Babel, because Babel is where the most replay value comes from, in my personal opinion. Of course, I get to the hardest part of the stage and it falls weirdly like this. I'll probably finish out this run and then call it a video. I'm trying to think what else would be. I wouldn't mind seeing some more randomness inserted into story mode to make it a bit more replayable. As it is right now, it's not exactly the most replayable of modes. Because once you've solved the puzzles, they don't change.
560 steps. Good update.
Oh, remove loads.
Good update.
Like, if they could make the load times borderline non-existent, that would be so nice. Right now, they are a bit longer than would be ideal on even the Xbox One port, which has shorter loads.
Good update.
What's up, PX? So hard. Yeah, I mean, Axismundi being broken in the first place wasn't intentional. So I would expect that to be fixed for sure. Alright, cool, we're past this. Holy cow. We've gotten past that, like, I think 4 times ever.
Good update. Good update. 70 steps. Good update. Good update. Good update. Good update.
I think the European version is still bugged. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't ever actually imported the European version. I only have the US and Japanese versions.
Good update. Good update. Good update. Now at 180 steps.
Did you say 180 steps? Holy cow. Yeah, it'd be cool for people to be able to experience this, because this is...
Good update.
You feel like a god when you finish Axismundi for the first time. One of the most satisfying video game moments I've ever had. Trying to think what else was similar. Getting out of pools at Evo was pretty close for
Good update.
Smash 4. That felt really, really, really good. Okay, so still bugged in Europe. Yeah, so for those that don't know, Axismundi in the US, and I guess just English releases in general, has a glitch where it doesn't recognize... You go up, and you level up 3 times, and the game never levels up from there. The stage is still completable. It does still eventually spawn the end gate, but the problem is that since you never level up again, and level ups are actually really important because they reset the fall stage, you have to be able to climb faster than the max fall rate for the bottom of the stage. And the reason that I think the glitch was introduced was because Japan had a balance patch released when it came out because the game was considered to be too difficult. And the US version, English version had that included already when the game was shipped, so something about how they implemented that on the disc must have caused an issue.
Good update. Good update. Good update. Good update. Good update.
Yeah, it is completable. I've never done it myself, but I'm told there's about a 1 in 4 chance of getting a pattern. And you know almost instantly, apparently, when you actually know how to solve it. I could take or leave Rapunzel. I thought Rapunzel was terrible, to be quite honest. I liked it at first, but really, really got grating. It's the only reason I don't have a platinum trophy for this game yet.
Good update. Good update.
I mean, on the bright side, it's more game, and it does get genuinely really, really hard. I just stopped being interested in it. And I'm also bad at it, so that might have something to do with it as well. I'm sure if I was better at it, I would be more interested in it, but... I didn't want to sit for 4 hours with a YouTube guide while I beat the puzzles one by one, so it's the only reason I don't have a plat for the game.
Go down to minus 210 steps.
Probably should do it at some point just so I can say I did, but I think I'm probably pretty damn good at the game without it.
Go down thing. Go down thing. Go down thing. Go down thing. He's reached 220 steps.
Combine leaderboards? Oh, I'd be happy with that. I mean, there's not going to be multiple versions anymore. Replays on Babel stages would be really cool to see, though. All they have to do is save the inputs in the RNG seed. I'd be totally okay with seeing what the world record for each stage looks like. I'm in a world of hurt. I'm in a world of hurt right now. Dang, unlucky. It's almost there. Advanced stats would be cool, for sure. I kind of rambled on a little bit more than I probably would normally have, but I think that covers just about everything. WWE pin. Yeah, this would be really fun. I mentioned that when I got to pins. I still think, like, I'm of the opinion, leave the inner, or remove the blue sheep advantage, but leave it as is right now. Because there is even a bit of skill to recognizing when you have a pin. Taunt would be interesting. Probably unnecessary. Have a bell ring when the pin happens. I mean, I mentioned what I would prefer to see would be once you're in a pin for a certain amount of time, the stage just, like, as you're pinned, the stage speeds up its falling. Remappable buttons, that's one that I forgot to mention would be really, really nice, especially because so many people do play on arcade sticks. Just being able to do that would be always a nice feature. I don't know why it's not baked into the operating system, to be quite honest. It should be at this point. That sounds really, really, really simple, but when you especially when you factor in that in Japan, circle and X are switched, that would be pretty bad. Or, like, it'd be kind of a annoying crossover, especially because we'll probably have a lot of people import the Japanese version so that we can get the tournament scene started for full body and switch off of the PS3 version. And having to switch buttons depending on which region we're playing would suck ass. Pardon my French. Moving pillow hits to buttons doesn't do anything, I don't think. It doesn't add a fake out. It just locks you in place. It would be the equivalent of a taunt. That doesn't add anything from a gameplay or a competitive standpoint. So, like, cool, but completely unnecessary. Wouldn't add anything, in my opinion.